My lowest point. Think of how low you've ever been. The worst part of your life. Maybe it's grieving somebody. Maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe it's financial difficulty. Maybe it's something else. But when you lose your ability to function, then you really are at a low point. And that's the point that alcohol will take you to, and that's the point it took me to in 2014. After 8 years of sobriety, I decided crazily to start drinking again. And within a few days of starting to drink after 8 years sober, I started to feel pretty rough. And then I approached the doctors and tried to get some medication, which I had in the past. They wouldn't give me any. And I went to all sorts of meetings, no good for me. And I couldn't get medication. And I decided to self-medicate with alcohol. Not a good idea. But when you're desperate and lonely and you have no real support, or people have given up on you because of the alcohol, then that's all you've got, isn't it? So I started to drink more to try and feel better. And then stupidly I tried to get some medications from the internet, which made things worse. And I went back to the doctor and said, I've taken some medication. Which got the internet? And he said, okay, obviously don't take that anymore, we'll try you on some real Dazipan. It's like it's supposed to be like alcohol in tablet form. I did try that, but I didn't trust it. I'd been drinking for so long, and I thought I'd never get off the drink, so more or less just drank and had them when you had a 7-day supply, and kept drinking more and more. And at that point, I was losing a lot of friendships, and relationships weren't good with my daughter and parents. I'd already split with my wife, but that's a different story. And I wasn't working, I was retired. Thankfully, I had an income, which was good. I didn't have the stress of having to find money. So I was living in a flat and I got really dilapidated, really. The heating wasn't working. I didn't have the ability to allow somebody in the flat, really. I was so embarrassed by my state of health, by the way I was living. I was living like I was living in a squalor. I had rats in the flat. Couldn't even get the pest people out because I didn't want to let them in the morning. Or anxiety was massively anxiety level was massively high. And I lost the will to live, to be fair. I was so down. And I was basically being called a drunk by my parents, by my sister. She gave up on me. I had no support. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to be a mess, you know. I really didn't. But I felt a mess. And because I had all this negativity, and I'm a bit of an overthinker. I think a lot of drinkers are overthinkers. I began to lose all of my confidence. And the only people I actually spoke to were people probably in similar positions to me who were at the pub. And my typical day would be just to try and get out of bed, really. Slats had broken the bed, bedding hadn't been changed, I had long hair, didn't have a shave, hadn't had a proper shower for ages because the water wasn't hot enough. In the end, the bathroom floor collapsed. As mentioned, I had rats in the apartment, chasing them bastards around. And it was bad. It was a really bad situation. Financially, I wasn't too bad. Like I say, I had some income, which was a godsend, but I just got worse and worse. I couldn't even go to the doctors. I became so physically weak, I couldn't go to the doctors. I lost all my confidence. So all I could do was to stagger around the flat, maybe get some help to get into a cab and get to the pub. And I used to get a few supplies from a local sort of 7-Eleven type shop. I always needed supplies. When you're a heavy drinker, you need supplies. Your biggest fear, well, my biggest fear was having another seizure, because I had seizures previously when I stopped drinking. I never wanted to run out of stock. And in the end, I used a company called Drink, and I used to get slabs of beer. Stella, actually, I remember. And they used to want me to go outside and sign or give them cash for the thing. I couldn't get outside, you know, because there was security. I didn't want to come into people's blocks of flats. Anyway, and I sort of said, if you want the money, you have to come in. So I don't even remember the old cheque system, write a cheque and sign it. And I used to write a cheque as best I could, and in the end I couldn't even write a cheque. I used to get the lads to write it for me, and I used to just put a squiggle on as a signature. And I got them to write the debit card number on the back and all that kind of. I couldn't even hold the card, still have to go on the card reader. God knows what they charged me. I didn't care as long as I had my supply. And yeah, I had stacks and stacks of these cans that I never drank in the end, but I needed all this stock. I was going mad with it. It actually turned me mad. That's how I feel about it now, looking back. Those years between 2014 and 2019 when I was hospitalised in 2019, between 2014 and 2019 I was just drinking. I wasn't really functioning, I was just drinking. I was drinking myself into an early grave, to be fair. I couldn't stop, I just couldn't physically stop. I wanted to stop. I had all these thoughts about maybe I should get myself arrested, maybe I should go to prison. At least I've got some medical help. I just could not stop, I couldn't get any help. And from then things just got worse and worse and worse. So I'll go to the pub now and again. People just say, God, you look terrible. I didn't realise how bad I looked, you see. And I went down to about 10 stone, I think, in the end. Really bad. I had this massive stomach, which was really hard to touch. It was like that. Hard as that. Which turned out to be ascites fluid, because when the liver shrinks with alcohol issues, then this protein can't be processed, or whatever it's called. It's called ascites fluid anyway. I didn't know this at the time, but I also had a really serious infection called spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. So no one knows I was ill. I hadn't been eating in that, and I hadn't been looked after myself. I hadn't been washing properly. I hadn't been doing anything properly. The digestive system was completely shot. I was waking up in the morning coughing up bile and blood. And that's my lowest point. I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned. I ignored messages on the phone, ignored phone calls. Didn't open the mail. Didn't want to see anybody. Became completely isolated, really. And I was really, really down. I mean, I can't imagine even going back to that state for an hour now, because my life's totally different. My stories are very extreme because I was taken to hospital with these complications, the ascites, the SBP, the peritonitis, low sodium level, and I was told I had 50-50 chance of getting out of the hospital. Anyway, the doctor came in and said, if you drink again, if you do get out, you're going to die within 6 months. So I was referred to another hospital, which is liver and gastro specialist hospital, where they do actually liver transplants. This is just at the start of COVID, so you imagine the hospital system was haywire, it was chaos. And they suggested putting this little stent in my liver, which they did, and the ascites fluid still wasn't going away. In most cases it does drain it away, but it didn't with me. So I was thinking, wow, what's happening here? I had this massive hernia as well. But since when they did this little operation with the stent in, the ascites was reoccurring. It just kept coming and coming. Well, it shouldn't have done. It should have lessened. Give it a bit more time. So sometimes it takes a bit longer to settle, but mine didn't. So I thought to balloon this stent up again, and they said I had COVID, but I was feeling so ill I didn't even realise I had COVID. And then I was basically in a wheelchair. I was going backwards and forwards to the hospital, still getting this fluid drained off. And I had this massive hernia, and then one day I decided to bleed and ended up in rhesus because it split. When you have your belly button as the weakest part of your stomach, the fluid has got to go somewhere. So you get this hernia like that, as big as that. It was massive, two hands with 2 tennis balls, and split across the top. Started bleeding, it wouldn't stop. At the time I was living with my elderly parents, called an ambulance. They came, put 2 blast bandages on me, still wouldn't stop the bleeding. And they took me to rhesus. I was going to bleed to death, and they managed to stitch it up. The surgeon said at the time, he said, if we can't stitch this up and stop the bleeding, then there's not much else we can do. The most frightening experience of my life. And then about 4 days later, I had an emergency operation to fix the hernia, and I was delighted with that. I thought, God, I've got a chance to live. I've got a chance to live. And from then on, I started to gain a little bit of confidence. I was still in hospital. I was in hospital for long periods, weeks at a time. Then I'd be let out for a few days and then come back again because the fluid was still building up. Eventually the fluid settled a little bit. I had a bit of hope. It's all about hope, you know, in your head. You've got to be positive. I think you're going to survive. And I got better. Remarkably, I got better. And I see the consultant now twice a year. And she said to me in February, I last saw her, if somebody told me then, in 2019, that you would get back this level of health, even I would have questioned it. And that was a massive boost for me. And she sort of looked at me and said, I'm really proud of you. And I was just quite emotional, really, to be honest. And now I'm here to help you. Because to get to that point of knowing or being aware that you might die is pretty horrific. And you think about it and think it's all my fault. And that's what habit turning into addiction does. I enjoyed drinking when I was younger. It did something for me, giving me a buzz, giving me a social presence. But in the end, it nearly killed me. Be careful. It's a vicious, devious drug, alcohol. And it will take you early. It's taken a lot of my friends early. And it'll take a lot more. You must listen to this. Take heed. I'm not a doctor, but I have a lot of experience of alcohol issues. And a lot of people on this site, on this channel, there's over 12,000 of us. There's lots of knowledgeable people on there. Reach out with them as well. Get in touch. The number one thing you have to remember is drink does you no good at all. It will take everything, give you zero. Sobriety will give you everything. Everything you ever wanted, everything you ever deserved. Okay? Get in touch with me. If you benefit from the channel, share it, like it, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Take care.